Thank you. Honorable Speaker of Azerbaijan Parliament, Professor Dr. Gafarova, dear OECPA President Ms. Sederfeld, dear OECPA Secretary General Mr. Montella, dear fellow parliamentarians, first of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Madam Gafarova, but also to Mr. Guliev, Chairman of General Committee for Economics, Climate and Science, for organizing this conference on the topics which are important today more than ever. We as parliamentarians have great responsibility to set adequate framework for making our economies more resilient to the pressures we face. Honorable colleagues, it is my pleasure to have the opportunity to address you on behalf of the country defined by its constitution as an ecological state. In line with constitutional commitment, Montenegro seeks to implement various public policies aimed on environmental protection. In this sense, let me mention some of the activities undertaken by authorities in Montenegro, implementing incentive measures for conservation of indigenous plant and animal species, as well as measures aimed at production with low carbon dioxide emissions. In the previous period, we have completed the construction of solar panels in rural areas and work actively on improving forest management in national parks. Montenegro is actively pursuing climate change policy both nationally and internationally as one of the 197 state parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, to which it has been a party since 2006. Our national greenhouse gas emissions account for only 0.009% of the global emissions, but we remain strongly committed to managing our development potentials in a responsible and sustainable manner and with the smallest impact on the environment and climate change. By ratifying the Paris Agreement on 11 October 2017, we confirmed our readiness to actively participate in all the international process related to reduction of harmful effects of climate change. The adoption of national strategy in the field of climate change by 2030 is a confirmation of our further commitment in the fight against the negative impacts of climate change. The Ministry of Ecology, Spatial Planning and Urbanism completed the process of revising the nationally determined contribution, which set a new goal for reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 35% by 2030, compared, of course, to 1990. Activities on the revision of national determined contribution has begun. A roadmap for monitoring the national determined contribution as well the action plan was created. With the latest calculation of greenhouse gas emissions, there is potential possibility of reducing emissions by up to 55%. As far as latest developments in Montenegro in the field of climate change is concerned, main activities in the last 6 months have been mainly related to the drafting of new law on protection against adverse impact of climate change, which will be finished by the end of this year. The main motivation behind the adoption of the new law is improvement of legislative framework for protection against the negative effects of climate change and further harmonization with the EU acquis in this field, as well as fulfillment of obligations defined by the Energy Community Decarbonization Roadmap. Since climate change mitigation is heavily dependent on urban actions, we need to support cities in acceleration their green and digital transformation. Montenegro became part of the EU mission, Climate Neutral and Smart Cities. The city's mission will involve local authorities, citizens, businesses, investors, as well as regional and national authorities to deliver climate neutral and smart cities by 2030 and to ensure that these cities act as experimentation and innovation hubs to enable all European cities to follow suit by 2050. Montenegro will continue to make efforts to remain ambitious at the fight against climate change to ensure prosperity for present and future generations. We will continue to develop our responses to the climate change policy and review our progress toward the goals in line with Montenegro's commitment under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement. In addition, the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans represent a new growth strategy for the Western Balkans, moving from traditional economic model to sustainable economy, in line with the European Green Deal. The main goal is to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 and align with European Green Deal's key elements. The Green Agenda for Western Balkan Action Plan envisaged 58 actions and 7 roadmaps for implementation that are focused on climate policy, sustainable energy, sustainable mobility, circular economy, depopulation, sustainable agriculture and food, supply and protection of nature and biodiversity. Montenegro actively participates in activities related to the Green Agenda in its action plan. Globally, we live in the era when environmental protection is one of the major challenges faced by humanity, so today's conference is a significant opportunity to learn about innovations in the field of environmental protection and to help each other in preserving it. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, in these challenging times today, we than ever as parliamentarians have special responsibility and duty to work together in strengthening our economies and to ensure our resilience and to fight against poverty and to fight against inequality, to work for sustainable development, but most of all, to work for peace and for protecting peace on our continent and all our continents. Dear friends, dear ladies and gentlemen, I really wish that we have successful work today and tomorrow, and thank you all for your attention.